Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora. Welcome back to my blind playthrough of Scholar of the First Sin for the PlayStation 4. This is episode 18, and as you can see, we have all four of the Ilium Lois Knights that we needed. I had forgotten that you get one right off the bat, such that you only need to collect 3 out in the wild. And so at the end of the last episode, the reason why it ended so abruptly was that I meandered around for another 5 minutes or so after the last cut that you saw, trying to figure out where to find the 4th knight. And of course, I had already done so. So as I've mentioned, we are going to be summoning for this fight. As I believe I've shown in the last 4 or 5 boss fights I've done, I have no problem doing them solo. And in fact, I'd say I'm much better when doing them solo. But, yeah, this is going to be our opportunity to see the full capability of Scholar of the First Sin in terms of its... Well, not the full capability because we won't have invaders, of course, but, we're going to be a crew of 8, essentially, descending into the chaos. I'm very excited about that. Among that 8, of course, is going to be Lucatiel of Mira. And then we have to have at least 1 human summon. So I hope you'll bear with me if this takes some time. But first and foremost... I didn't get to see whether Lucatiel does a gesture or not. Oh, well, that's a shame. I'm going to be really upset if she actually does a gesture. Alright, let's see. No summon signs there. I really don't want to summon Twiggy Shay. But if we can't find 2 other players, then we're going to have to. Because, I mean... do I really have to say anything? Great bow with the bell helm. Like, why? And a starting set of armor. I believe it's the Wanderer set. Or no, not the Wanderer set. That's the... I don't even know. So there were a number of summon signs here before. Hey, fella. Thank you kindly. See, Turok Judas isn't wearing any pants. It's, to each their own, I suppose. I really don't want to summon Twiggy Shay. Let's go see if there are any signs over here first, and then if not, I guess we're going to have to summon her. Her or him, I'm not really sure. Alright, no signs, so we're going to have to go with the NPC. And I know that Turok Judas is probably thinking, don't summon the NPCs, it just increases the boss's health. I'm well aware of that. And it pains me to do it as well, but we've got to do at least 1 boss fight with 4 summons. And then in addition to that, having our... our 4 Lois Bros, I suppose. Okay, so here we go. Alright, that was chaotic. Extremely, extremely chaotic, as you just witnessed. And as I mentioned before the boss fight, often doing these fights one-on-one is extremely advantageous compared to doing it with a huge group like that. If for no other reason, then it helps you feel much more that you're in control. That was a very different kind of fight, in that it felt like ultimately what I did didn't matter all that much because there were so many of us, and that we could just eventually overpower the Burnt Ivory King, which is very much what we did. There were a couple spots where I just, wailed on him, ran out of stamina, and got punished for it, but ultimately didn't matter because his aggro was split in so many different directions. So, interesting, but certainly I don't think nearly as enjoyable as it might have otherwise been if I were doing it solo. But I had to do it just to see what it would look like. So that was pretty cool.
Seeker of fire, conqueror of dark. I too sought fire once. With fire, they say, a true king can harness the curse. A lie, but I knew no better. Seeker of fire, you know not the depth of dark within you. It grows deeper still, the more flame you covet. Flame, oh, flame. Seeker of fire, I see you've subdued another foul creature. One of the father of the abyss spawn. That confounded quintessence of humanity. The abyss once had form, but then dissipated. And yet, traces of its existence endured. Each fragment, thirsting for power, spread dark with no relent. My dear Chandra was one such fragment. A feeble, tiny thing that thirsted for power more than any other. Driven by insatiable lust for a worthy vessel. One day, fire will fade, and dark will become a curse. Men will be free from death, left to wander eternally. Dark will again be ours, and in our true shape, we can bury the false legends of yore. Only, is this our only choice? Seeker of fire, coveter of the throne. Seek strength. The rest will follow.
Okay. So we have now essentially not quite beaten the curse, but for as long as we are wearing any of the ancient crowns, we will not hollow. We will still lose our souls, but the mechanic of hollowing is halted. And I've spoken about this in previous episodes, not at great length, but there is a distinction between capital H hollowing and small h hollowing. And that is to say that you can endure the mechanic of hollowing, the small h hollowing, and not go big H hollow That is to say, not lose your sense of hope and purpose and your drive to go on, to continue living. So that isn't to say, so, pardon me, let me back up for a second. So you could wear this crown, never hollow, but still become a hollow. So this is an item essentially which helps you manage the symptoms of hollowing, but it doesn't cure the underlying disorder. It doesn't cure the underlying curse, as it were. So very interesting. We're not going to be wearing it because all of the helm is much too nice, but some food for thought. So yeah, this is episode 18, and it seems as though this playthrough is going to be done just as quickly as it started. Pardon me, while I focused there for a second to make sure I landed that parry. So I think I'm going to return to Bloodborne for my next playthrough. After which, I think I might finally do a Dark Souls 1 Let's Talk Lore playthrough. So, unless the plan changes, I'm going to be doing a Bloodborne Let's Talk Lore playthrough next, and I'm going to try and do it much more slowly so that I can allow time for people to leave comments so that I can address that as I go along in the series. And I know I mentioned I wanted to do that with this playthrough, but once again ended up recording about one episode per day, which doesn't really leave enough time for that. But I suppose in my defense there hadn't been that many comments yet anyway, so...
My journey is already complete. My name is Shanalot. The dragon gave me this name, for I was born with none. I was born of dragons, contrived by men. By ones who would cozen fate herself. They are the ones who created me. But they failed. I did not come out as intended. Fate would not be bested, and men were cursed once again. If you proceed, Nashandra will come after you, knowing that you will take the throne and link the fire. She covets the first flame and the great soul. Put Nashandra to rest.
Okay. So once again, we're getting a lot of people telling us what to do, where to go, who to see, what we need, what we don't, what we want to stop, what we want to embrace. So the moral of the story in Dark Souls 2 seems to be that we're all pawns to an extent, and that there are pre-established limits to what it is we can and can't do. That the conditions of possibility are such that we only have access to a restricted range of options. And so this is, of course, true in Dark Souls 2, as it is in any video game by design. You can't have limitless gameplay, because the game would just, it would be possible to get through it. Bradley of the Old Guard. I believe we summoned him elsewhere, but I can't recall where. He does have a rather nice armor set. It's Benhart. Interesting to note that though we find Lucatil's summon sign in the Grand Cathedral, we do not find it here. So, not inconsistent with where we left her before, because she she would have to... I'm trying to think of where the key is. She made it to Drangleic Castle. She made it all the way to Aldia's Keep. And that is consistent with her sign being in the DLC. Because she found the Frozen Flower key in Drangleic Castle. She must have gone all the way to the Undead Crypt. She killed Velstadt, got the King's Ring, and then found her way to Aldia's Keep, and that's where her journey ended. But so unlike Benhart, and apparently Bradley of the Old Guard, Lucatiel did not make it all the way to the end of the game. So just something interesting to note. Once again, she went capital H hollow, or she could be said to have gone capital H hollow. It's not entirely clear, but certainly she lost some of her purpose. She had nothing left to do after she put her brother out of his misery. But I talk at great length about that and the rest of the lore in Dark Souls 2, once again in my Dark Souls 2 Let's Talk Lore playthrough. So if you're interested in that and you don't feel like I talked about it enough in this playthrough, I would highly recommend going to check that one out. But for the time being, we're going to take care of the end of the game here, and we'll chat during the credits.
Brave undead, you have proven yourself to me. Now, be one with the dark.
Many monarchs have come and gone. One drowned in poison, another succumbed to flame. Still another slumbers in the realm of ice. Not one of them stood here as you do now. You, conqueror of adversities. Give us your answer. remain here patiently. The throne will certainly receive you. But the question remains. What do you want? Tell me. Light, dark, or something else entirely?
So that was among my sloppiest, I would say. It started off quite well, but among my sloppier defeats of Aldia. Light, dark, or something else entirely. This is something I've seen talked about a fair bit in the videos I uploaded. I was among the first, if not the first, I think, to upload all of the new Aldia encounters on YouTube. And people have been discussing in the comments of one of those videos, I'm not sure which ones, or which one, whether he, and I assume it's the one that, where he mentions that very line, because, but I do have 2 boss Aldia defeats already uploaded. This will be, I guess, the 3rd. But in any case, people have been discussing light, dark, or something else entirely, that line by Aldia. And some people, have just been remarking on how it's kind of silly or it doesn't make much sense. Again, you can read a lot between the lines there. And further to what I was saying about, perhaps you could see the moral of the story in Dark Souls 2 as being that you may think you have a choice, but your choices are remarkably limited given, the notion that we are all free people, when in fact we operate within certain conditions of possibility, the formations of which are much too complex a topic for me to cover in this video. But yeah, so that line by Aldia could be seen as somewhat rubbing it in the player's face that, you really only have 2 choices. And on a more meta level, the developers perhaps, firing back at the players by, ultimately it's an arbitrary choice, whether there's 1 or 2, the game will still, the larger story is out of the hands of any one player. It's out of the hands of the chosen undead or the cursed undead, whatever the designation is for the player character. And that, yeah, these things all kind of happen above us. We're all just pawns in some larger game. And I think that certainly comes through a lot here. But I believe in the last playthrough I did, I chose the dark ending, so this time why don't we choose the light ending? watching most of the playthrough, I quite enjoyed that a lot. Some of the problems that were present in the main game were addressed. Others were compounded, such as kind of Dark Souls 2's difficulty with difficulty, in that sometimes or often, I guess part of it has to do with the design of the areas as well, such that it restricts the possibility of creating really wonderful engagements on a small scale, rather than just throwing a ton of enemies at you and forcing you to take encounters very, very slowly. And once again, perhaps that's the intent of the design, to force the player down a very narrow set of possibilities, a set of possible ways of playing or of handling each engagement. And it's entirely possible, though I hope this is not the case, that this could be indicative of a shift in design philosophy at FromSoft. I suppose that remains to be seen if Dark Souls 3 is in fact a thing, whether that bears fruit, or whether that comment might actually, whether there might actually be something there, because in Bloodborne, of course, the number of ways of dealing with much of the game are rather, I guess that's not entirely fair, but based on the reduction in the number of stats, the reduction in the types of non-melee builds you can use. And I say this as someone who is primarily a melee user. You will have seen throughout this playthrough, I didn't use any magic at all. I didn't level my attunement, my faith, or my intelligence. But I think it's important for those options to exist. And Bloodborne narrowed the range of potential options considerably. And in Dark Souls 2, that shines through more in the gameplay aspect of it. Whereas in Dark Souls 1, and as I understand, though I've never played it, Demon Souls, there are so many different ways that you can go through those games and handle certain encounters. And I'm very much looking forward to that coming through. You know what, I'm tempted to do Dark Souls 1 Let's Talk Lore first, seeing as it's been so very long since I've A, played Dark Souls 1, and B, I don't have any Dark Souls 1 material currently uploaded on my channel, so I'd be interested to see what everyone out there thinks about, would think about me doing a Dark Souls 1 playthrough. But you can let me know in the comment section below. I apologize that this playthrough wasn't, that I didn't really have a lot of interesting stuff to say that I haven't already said in previous playthroughs, and that some of it was recorded under conditions, once again, that were not ideal, similar to parts of my Bloodborne playthrough. I apologize for that. Once I have a playthrough idea that isn't just running through the game as my last two were, I believe you'll see that, the episodes are a fair bit more interesting. Although I think there were many, many funny and very entertaining spots in this playthrough that I hope for all of you out there watching made for some entertaining episodes. In particular, we had a lot of fun with the seeds, and I think that's a really cool move how they made it so very easy to farm them. I was disappointed by the lack of online interaction. We didn't really see, we weren't really invaded, we didn't really have all that much online interaction, but so now there's credits as well for the original Dark Souls. Okay, interesting. Some of the encounters that were problematic in the base game were removed. Other problematic encounters were added. So it was certainly a mixed bag in almost every sense of the term. But the 60 FPS was a very nice change. I do like the addition of several NPCs, though I think they perhaps went a bit overboard there, and will likely allow newer players to get through the game without having so incredibly fulfilling an experience, say when they take out a really incredibly difficult boss by yourself. I know certainly I didn't feel anywhere near as accomplished taking out the burnt Ivory King in this episode as I did in taking out Sir Alon and the Fume Knight in the previous one, because, or in the episode prior to that, I can't recall which one it was, but yeah, there's something to be said for doing as many of the boss fights by yourself as you can, because that, to me, is the truest possible way of experiencing them. But overall, yeah, I must say, Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, if you're not strapped for cash and you want to support FromSoft, even though, the re-release is problematic to begin with, I would say pick this up, definitely. It's a lot of fun, and I say this even though I haven't played with any of my friends on it yet, so hopefully the Trash Man will pick it up soon, and we'll start putting together some more troll videos for you. This build that I just finished the game with is the only build that I have thus far, which is, I usually fill up the build slots pretty quickly. But yeah, as I've mentioned, this is the only Souls I've really been playing the last couple of weeks, pretty much since I started recording this series late at night. Although it's late afternoon, early evening right now. So today's a little bit better, and I hope that shows through in my commentary, and that I'm a little bit more coherent and attentive today than I have been in episodes past. I'm not really sure what more I have to say, other than I might do Dark Souls 1, Let's Talk Lore next. I might do Bloodborne, Let's Talk Lore next. I still haven't completely decided. I might end up doing Bloodborne simply because I haven't turned on my 360 for quite some time, so I would have to rearrange my recording setup, and that's kind of a pain in the rear, so I might just stick with Bloodborne sheerly out of convenience, and just because it's the newest of all the Souls games, obviously. Although, yeah, it's quite remarkable to see how quickly the Twitch viewership for Bloodborne just collapsed, and once again, having to do with some of the odd decisions they made around Bloodborne multiplayer and about restricting PvP. And yeah, it's just really, really disappointing. I've created a number of builds in Bloodborne for the sole purpose of trolling. Gone through, 10 or 15 hours just to make a funny video. But the problem is just there's not nearly enough invaders. But Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, much better, supervised by Hidetaka Miyazaki, unfortunately not directed by him, which would mean that he would have designed all of the areas. Certainly an upgrade over the main game. It's still Dark Souls 2 through and through, and that's not a bad thing. It's its own game. It does what it does very well, and it does what it does poorly. Still does those things poorly. So if you liked the original game and you want to support FromSoft, I'd definitely say pick it up. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed watching this as an alternative to that. Because, of course, we will eventually be getting Dark Souls 3 in early 2016, so completely understand if you want to save your money for that. But thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next playthrough. Please do leave any comments below that whether you liked it or didn't like it, certain aspects that I could do better or not do at all or do more of. Don't hesitate to let me know, because I very much appreciate getting your feedback, and I very much appreciate your viewership. And we've earned a trophy, the Heir. So yes, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next playthrough. Bye-bye!